again, everybody. This is Derek, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and Miniature video. In today's video, we are continuing on with our Marshals and Generals 15mm Napoleonic project update. Okay, so before I get started, I wanted to say that I have my project update, which pretty much focuses on my miniature progress, like what I've got painted, what I've rebased, and things like that. And I have what's called a dev blog, which talks about my progress towards completion of my rules, marshals, and generals. But I feel like there's a little crossover between the dev blog and my updates, because as I give updates, I also kind of talk about maybe what I've completed during my Marshals and Generals progress. So just bear with me. I've got two video series. I've got the dev blog and I've got the updates, and there can be some crossover with the updates because I want the update to be more inclusive or more comprehensive, and I want the dev blog to focus on my rules and how I'm developing the rules. But you might see a little bit of that during the updates. Okay, now having said that, I'm going to start off. You see the dice on the screen here. These are called averaging dice. There's no ones and there's no sixes. They only have 2 through 5s. And I was planning on, or my latest iteration was to roll these to determine pips. And these pips would be used to spend on your battalions to get them to activate and do their things. Okay, so I've discarded, or I've gone away from this idea. I'm not using the pip method. We're not drawing cards. We're not rolling dice. We're not doing any of that. I'm going to allow every battalion to activate every turn, and the command and control is going to be similar to Napoleon's battles, in that there's going to be the overall army commander, and as long as your other commanders are within his command range, like a corps commander, the corps commander can reach down to the division commanders, and the division commanders can reach down to the brigade commanders, and then the brigades reach down to the battalion commanders. So as long as your units are within the command radius, then they can activate. And that's, I've decided to just, because I did a little playtesting off camera with the pip system. I also playtested a little bit with the card system, and I realized that I wasn't getting any benefit, no substantial benefit from having the players take an extra step in either drawing cards or rolling dice. It all it did was slow the game down, and one of my thought processes was fast, fun, and playable. I'm trying to speed the game up as much as possible, and by that extra step of drawing cards or rolling dice, didn't do that. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the changes I made in flocking my miniatures. I've gone through a number of different iterations, and I've kind of come to a decision. Well, maybe not a decision, but it's what I'm doing right now. Previously, or initially, when I did my rebasings, I was rebasing, and then I decided to flock with a ground scatter. This ground scatter works really well, and it looks good on the base, but it just didn't. This is dark green, by the way, as well as this one. This is also dark green. And it works really good. It's not too large for the figures. It covers the base exactly the way I wished it to. And this is the medium green, which also looks really good. I'm happy with it, but I've decided to move away from this. Uh, um, and I'll show you what I've gone to. Okay, so I've decided to use my medium grit. I've got this dark brown. Um, it's a dark brown coarse ballast. Um, I actually ordered this by accident, but it's turned out very well. So what I do now is I will sprinkle a little bit of this onto my base before I actually do the flocking. And then when I go to flock, I use this almost exclusively nowadays, which is the Knock Static Grass, but it is the Spring Meadow. I don't know if you can kind of see that as a focus. Yeah, Spring Meadow 2.5 millimeter. And you can also see that I've got a little talus in there as well. I mix talus with my static grass, and then so I sprinkle the ballast on first, the dark brown, and then I coat the base with the static grass with the talus mixed in, and you get a little different. You get a different look to it. Okay, so you can see the dark brown talus or ballast, and then you can also see just a random light brown talus, and then the static grass. This is the way I'm basing my figures now. You take an artillery piece. You can see the ballast, static grass, also the medium brown Vallejo ground texture underneath, and it actually, I think, it really makes the figures see, because what I'm trying to do with my ground cover is not just cover the base with grass. What I'm trying to do is cover the base with grass to the point where it enhances the painting of the figures. So you can see how that makes the figures stand out quite a bit, right? And it makes the base look good. Okay, let me show you just another infantry. Well, I'm going to show you all the figures I've completed. So once I do that, you'll kind of see all of the different units that I've done, and how they see how that kind of makes it look a little rocky, but also with grass, it disguises the fact that each of these figures have their own base, you know, and that really brings out the colors of the figures itself. So it's kind of like they all work together in unison. They accentuate each other. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of time, and I'm going to cycle through all the figures that I have rebased. So, all right, so right now what I'm planning on doing is going over all the units that I've completed so far. up to this point. Now, I've painted quite a bit more, but I need to rebase them. So I'm only showing the figures that I've rebased. This being the first chasseurs. And this being the sixth chasseurs. You'll note that I've changed everything to the 40 millimeter frontage, 3 figures per base, and then the 30 millimeter depth. And I think they look really good. I'm happy with my I'm happy with them. And the next unit here is the 6th Lancers. These are the guys that have their lances down, like they're charging or ready to use. If I remember right, these are Old Glory figures that you had to actually glue the right arms on. So the right arms came as a separate piece with the lance, and then you posed it. And you'll note that the new paint, the new flocking style that I've used. I think it looks really good. It makes the figure stand out quite. All right, the next unit. All right, and this is the 5th Lancers, with their lances upright. It's one way that I can easily identify which ones are which. I had the lances upright or the lances lowered. These guys are the ones with the baby blue trim. Yeah. Now, on most of my cavalry units, what I will do is I will paint the horses various colors of brown, and then the musician will be on a gray or a white, very light gray horse, and officers will be on like a darker gray or black horse. Usually. But that doesn't always work out that way. Now, having done the 1st and 6th chasseurs, that is Hubert's brigade, which is this guy, right? That's his brigade. And then the 5th and 6th Lancers is Wathiez. Wathiez's brigade. So I have 2 brigade commanders ready to go for those 2 brigades. So basically, Pyre's division is almost complete. I just need to do his 6-pound horse artillery battery, and I'll actually have Pyre's division complete because I already have Pyre and actually I got to rebase the limber. But once I rebase the limber for Pyre and get his 6-pound horse battery done, then Pyre's division will be completely done. All right, and this is the 1st and 2nd Battalion of the 93rd Regiment, which is part of Gauthier's brigade. So 1st and 2nd of the 93rd. And as you know, the 1st Battalion carries the colors and the eagle, and the 2nd Battalion has the white, but there shouldn't be an eagle, but I put it on there anyway. Old Glory doesn't provide 1st Battalion or 2nd, or I should say, other battalion standards. They're all 1st Battalion standards, so they all have the eagle. If I wanted to, I could do a little snipping and cutting and turn that into a spear point, but I decided not to bother with that and just leave the eagle. It'll be just fine. And these guys are all in great coats. You know, they each have a company, which is one base of grenadiers and voltigeurs in every battalion that I'm doing. And here you go with the 92nd Regiment, also 1st and 2nd Battalion. Again, you'll see the grenadier and a voltigeur unit in each. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but on my voltigeur units in these two regiments, the green and yellow combination for their pom poms were reversed. Like these have green on the top, where the previous one had yellow on the top. Also, these are all done with the new basing flocking technique, which I really like. I can't stress this enough. I really like it. Now, I do want to point something out before I move on to other battalions. Uh, in on a 6 base battalion, I usually make a command stand, right, with their white pom poms or whatever colors are necessary for that regiment. And then I do the red and the green/yellow, depending on the situation, for the voltigeurs, which only leaves me 3 more companies. And historically, there would have been 4 companies, uh, maybe less than 100 men each, just to balance it out. But because we're doing 6 bases, and there are 4 pom pom colors, I use the blue pom poms, I use the orange pom poms, and I use the purple pom poms. So you'll see blue, orange, and purple pom poms. You will not see the 4th company, which is a dark green. You're not going to see that because it would obscure the voltigeurs, right? The voltigeurs and that other company would have green pom poms, which I don't want to double up on the green, even though that's historically correct. But because there is one less company stand, might as well just drop off and not use that green. And that's the name of that tune. Okay, now because this is the complete regiment, or the complete brigade, for and with all 4 of these battalions uh, being the complete brigade for Gauthier, I decided to just go ahead and show you that I have Gauthier's brigade commander ready to go. So I do have the entire brigade. It's one of Foy's brigades. Jammin would be the next brigade, and I don't have any of those guys done at all. So now Foy does have his artillery finished, and we'll show you that later. All right. I also have the 1st Battalion of the 1st Regiment, part of Soy's brigade, but this is the only battalion I have done of Soy's brigade. This is one of the first ones that I rebased, and you can see it's using the old scattergrass as the texture. And you can see, in my opinion, it doesn't really bring out the colors of the unit. Not bad. It looks good. Don't get me wrong. It looks good. And it actually goes on easier because the scatter doesn't blow around in the wind like static grass does. So static grass is a little harder to use, but I think it looks better. All right, now this is 2 battalions of the 2nd Light Regiment. You got the 1st and 2nd battalions. Again, with the blue, orange, and purple companies. Now, they also have grenadiers and voltigeurs, but they don't call them voltigeurs in the light battalions. They actually call them chasseurs. That is a little confusing with the chasseur à cheval, but à cheval basically means cavalry. So you have cavalry cheval, and this is, or cavalry chasseurs, and this is just foot chasseurs, which chasseur in French means hunter. So that's what they call their light companies. These were both done with a dark green and a light green scatter. I wanted to see, or I wanted to kind of differentiate the battalions with a little bit different color block so that they would stand out as their own separate battalions. But I think that's unnecessary. It was just an added thought that went through my head that I would give them a slightly different color block to kind of bring your eyes like this is a battalion, that's a battalion. Now this regiment actually has 4 battalions, but I've only completed these first 2. Well, actually, I have the other ones, but they're not rebased. All right, now here you'll see the artillery of the 2nd Corps. We have the 3 foot troops and the corps artillery. The corps artillery are 12-pounders. So you'll see there's a couple of 12-pounders right here. And then we have 3 at the 5th, the 6th, and the 9th Division guns, all being 6-pounders. Yeah, so we got 2 guns per battery, which in Marshals and Generals, that is, 99% of your batteries are going to be 2 guns. But there's going to be some small batteries or half batteries, and they would just be 1 gun, which is obviously half of 2. And then there's going to be large batteries, like there were some Russian batteries that had like 12 guns in them or something like that. So we'll mark those with 3 guns as a large battery. Yeah, so you got your, just looking casually, that looks like the 12-pounders, and these are all 6-pounders. 5th, 6th, and 9th, all using the new flocking scheme. And you can tell it really makes the colors of the gun, the colors of the crew members really stand out quite a bit, I think. All right. All right. Now remember, guns are not the only things that make up a artillery battery. You have to have the guns, but you also have to have 1 limber model per battery. Now the limbers in some games are left off the table, and then you place them on the table when the guns limber up. I'm not going to do that in my game. I'm going to leave the limber model on the table because they don't just vanish or disappear. They actually sit behind the guns, with the with the ammo caissons and the the limber crews and all that. They're ready to go. So like when the limbers need to, or when the guns need to move, the limbers are ready to go and they're sitting there next to the guns. So uh, so I'm going to put them on the, I'm leaving them on the table so that when if a limber is attacked, it's like attacking the whole battery. It's actually it's part of the battery. All right, now this is the only two that I've got rebased and flocked. I have one more rebased, but he's not flocked, and then I have three others that are not even rebased. Uh, I still need to do the horse artillery limbers as well, which I have them, but they're still in the bag. All right, now we're going to start showing off a little bit of the Allied side. These guys here are Hanover Field Jaeger Corps. So it's kind of a smaller unit. There's only 4 bases in the unit. Now, there are certain units that fought in battalion formations, and then there are certain units that fought in primarily skirmish formations. Units that fight primarily in skirmish formations, I actually mark them as a different style of base, a 40 by 40. But if the unit fought primarily as like a standard battalion style formation, maybe with enhanced skirmishers, that's entirely possible. Like they might have a lot of men out front fighting as a skirmish screen, but they still fought primarily in a battalion formation. I'm going to mount them as a normal infantry battalion. Now, in their stat line, I'm going to give them bonuses based on the fact that they do have enhanced skirmisher screens or they fought primarily as a skirmish. But the only ones that I'm going to actually display on the table as skirmishers are the tiny units. And this was the Hanover Field Jaeger Corps. Now, speaking of the devil, this is the Nassau Volunteer Jaeger Company, and they did fight as skirmishers, and there were really only one company on the table. So I'm going to field them as a tiny unit, but in skirmish formation. So all my tiny units are going to always be in skirmish. That's just the way tiny units deploy. Because pretty much the only tiny units are skirmishers. So, and these are the NASA, what I call volunteer company. All right, now I finished the 2 Brunswick batteries. We've got Maul's foot battery, and we have Heinemann's horse battery. So we've got a foot artillery, and we have a horse artillery, still needing their limbers. Now, Minifig produced artillery limber drivers and riders for the Brunswick, and that's where I picked those up. So they're still in the bag, ready to be attached to some limbers. And these guys here are the 5th Belgian Light Dragoons on the new style flock. Yeah, they look. I'm happy with them. I keep saying they look good, but of course they look good. I painted them, but some units I'm not happy with. But these I'm very happy with. All right, now here are two of Halkett's battalions. You've got the 30th and the 69th, right? So you've got the 6 stands each. Now the British, because of their two flag layouts, what I'll do is I'll put one flag from the King's color on a stand, and I'll put another flag of the regimental colors on another stand. Now, sometimes I'll put both flags on the same stand, but usually I'll split them up like. You also get a light unit in each battalion, so you'll see like green pom poms and green cords on the skirmisher style guys. But other than that, regular British battalions. Part of Halkett's brigade. And here's two more battalions from Halkett's brigade, completing his brigade. We've got the 33rd and the 73rd. Double check. Yep, 73rd. And the 33rd. Also done, that whole brigade was done with the old flocking method. And you can see that I tried to put a different color on each battalion to kind of really make their battalions stand out. I think that's unnecessary. I'm going forward. I'm going to be using my new basing technique. Now, little anecdote. Well, here let's also put Halkett out there because his brigade is complete. Now, the King's color is always to be portrayed on the right side, where the regimental color will always be portrayed on the left side. Remember that. If you are putting two flags on the same stand, or if you're deploying them in the field, always put the King's color to the right of the regimental color. That's something that one of my community members mentioned to me a year or so ago, a couple of years ago, that I really hadn't considered, right? I was just basing them however I wanted. But going forward, I'm always going to put the King's color to the right. And that really makes sense because in the United States, our stars and bars, our Old Glory, our national flag is always displayed to the right of any other flags in the building or in the procession or whatever. It's also always on the right, and also always higher than any other flag. If you ever see the American flag displayed to the left of a flag or lower than a flag, bring it up to somebody because that's actually incorrect. And I get that, and I bet you we got that custom or that tradition from our English heritage. We probably they probably have done that for centuries, and we basically adopted that when we formed our own country. All right, that's the end of Halkett's brigade. Let's move on. All right, so that was the last unit that I have completed rebasing and then also reflocking. So I've got a bunch more units that I need to rebase and a few more units that I need to paint up to make sure we get Quatre Bras ready. Now, once I've got Quatre Bras finished, that's actually the majority of the units needed to do the English right flank. 99% of the units that are on the right flank were actually at Quatre Bras. Same with the French, their left flank, which is that whole side of the battlefield. Uh, Now, the only thing I would need to do Waterloo would be the right flank of the French side, the guard, and then the across the field with the Allies as well, and then maybe do the Prussians a little bit later because they come in late in the battle anyway. So we'll progress from Quatre Bras into Waterloo, but right now we're just trying to get Quatre Bras finished. So a couple of things I just want to bring up, just as kind of a summary of what I've talked about. My basing, flocking, and texturing I've redone, and so or reimagined, and so going forward, that's what I'm going to stick with for all the units. And then I have gotten in the all the limbers and limber crews needed for the horse batteries, as well as like horse artillery figures and the horse artillery limbers. And I've even got some allied limbers and limber crews that I need to put together for that as well. We've gotten away from the averaging dice concept or the card concept because it's actually it would throw off, or basically it slows the game down without adding any substantial benefit. Having to decide where you spend your pips and play your cards to decide which units get to go and which units, I think just basically slows the flow of the game. Now, having said that, part of my movement concept was units. Every unit moved the same amount, but would cost more or less pips or cards to move based on their formations. Where what that meant was units in more mobile formations would get to move easier because it would cost less pips. And the ones in the less mobile formations, it would cost the generals more pips to move them, meaning it would slow them down, which in reality, it doesn't slow them down because usually the pips, like a unit in line, can move just as far as a unit in march column because it would just cost less or fewer pips. But what that wound up doing was the units were moving exactly the same speed. And I kind of didn't want that. So I'm going to revert my rules back to a previous idea where every unit gets to move, but its movement rate is going to be reduced or increased based on what formation they are in. So it is going to be, I'm going to go back to a formation driven movement rate, but I am going to allow for a larger variety of formations. And remember, I still plan on doing a 2-part movement, so you get like a first move and a second move. And I'm going to maybe make march column move like 10 inches. This is just a thought. Maybe 10 inches. And then the attack columns moving at like 8 inches. And then maybe lines moving at 4 inches. Or maybe, I don't know what the numbers are going to be. But so a line would be able to move 8 inches if it used both actions to move. But it could exchange one of those moves into expanding the line or retracting the line or wheeling or something. So we'll try to figure all that out. Maybe in my next dev blog, we'll talk about movement rates. But basically, command is going to be based on a chain of command from the senior officer measuring to the next officer, down to the last officer, then to the unit. And if you're in command, you get to do all your actions. If you're out of command, I'm thinking units don't move at all. Maybe Cav gets one of their 2 movements or something like that until the general regains command of them. And now going forward, from this video forward, I'm not going to be showing off like every battalion that I've done. I'm only going to show off the ones that I've completed going forward. So you'll get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 battalions as I complete them, but you're not going to get the entire, allotment. Until I get closer to completion, at that point, I'll just put them on the table as a complete army, like I did with my Meg armies, and I will show them off as I complete larger portions of the army. But as I complete units, I'm going to show them off 1 unit at a time going forward, so it won't take as long. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and watching this video. If you're interested in what you're seeing here on the screen, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Like this video, it helps out the algorithm, and be sure to hit the notification icon so that you'll be notified anytime I upload a new video. And if you're interested in maybe purchasing some Old Glory 15 millimeters or even Warlord 28 millimeters or whatever, check out my eBay store, and that way you'll get a chance to check out my new sales and things like that. And make sure you're notified. And finally, if you have any figures that you need painted, send me an email, and then what I'll do is I will send you a updated 2024 price sheet, which I have updated. All right, and I will catch you in the next video.